Horrifying. A tiny child trembling and huddled in the pitch-black darkness, little fingers desperately pressing one letter after another on a cracked, broken phone screen. "Grandma Linda, please help Mommy. Travis is hurting her so bad. Please come quick. We're so scared." Mommy isn't yelling anymore. Then the voice drops suddenly low, almost a haunted whisper. But that desperate cry for help never reached the grandmother. It fell into the hands of a total stranger, one of the richest and most feared men in the entire city of Pittsburgh, a man the whole region both respects and dreads in equal measure. And in just a matter of minutes, blood will be spilled, doors will be smashed, and a tragedy that seemed to have no escape will change the destiny of 5 human lives forever. Do you dare to keep listening to the story where one single wrong number turned a living nightmare into a glimmer of hope, and then turned that hope into a love so intense, so terrifying that no one would ever believe it could possibly be real? Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. The wind howled through the cracked window of the tiny apartment in Pittsburgh's Hill District like a living thing, carrying the bite of early October 2025 cold straight into Sarah Jennings's bones. The single room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen for her and the twins felt smaller every night, the walls pressing in, stained with years of leaks and neglect. The radiator clanked uselessly, long since broken, so Sarah had learned to layer every blanket they owned, thin, threadbare things from thrift stores, over the children's small bodies on the sagging mattress they all shared. Sarah was 29, but the mirror in the bathroom, if you could call the peeling sliver above the sink, a mirror, showed a woman who looked much older. Her cheeks were hollow from too many skipped meals, her dark hair dull and tied back with a frayed rubber band, her green eyes shadowed by exhaustion that never lifted. She worked double shifts at a dollar store downtown when she could get the hours, but the pay barely covered rent, let alone the electric bill or the twins' formula when they were babies. Now 5 years old, Noah and Emma still woke hungry some nights, their little stomachs growling in the quiet dark. Tonight was worse than most. Travis had come home after midnight, reeking of cheap whiskey from the bar down on Center Avenue. He had lost another load at the truck stop poker game, and the anger had followed him like smoke. Sarah had tried to stay quiet to keep the children asleep, but his voice had risen anyway. Accusations about money she didn't have, about the twins being too much trouble, about how she was useless without him. The first slap had echoed off the thin walls. Sarah had stumbled back against the kitchen counter, tasting blood. She hadn't cried out. She never did anymore. But the twins had woken. Noah, the quieter one, had grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her into the narrow closet beside the bathroom, the only place with a door that locked from the inside. Sarah had followed them, heart-hammering, whispering, "Stay quiet, babies. Mommy's okay." But Travis had followed too, his heavy footsteps shaking the floorboards. He yanked at the closet knob, cursing. "Open this damn door, Sarah. You think you can hide from me?" She had pushed the children deeper into the darkness, pressing her body against the door as he pounded. The wood groaned. Her arms ached from holding it shut. Pain bloomed across her cheek, her ribs places he had hit before. She felt dizzy, the room tilting, but she held on. In the closet, Noah clutched his mother's old phone, the one with the cracked screen she used for job applications. It was the only thing of value they owned. Sarah had told him once in calmer days, "If something bad happens, text Grandma Linda. She'll help." Grandma Linda lived in Erie, now hours away, but she was the only family left who still answered sometimes. Noah's small fingers shook as he opened the messages. The screen glowed faintly in the dark. Emma whimpered against his shoulder. Outside, the pounding grew louder. Their mother's voice cracked, "Travis, please, the kids." Noah typed letter by letter, tears blurring the screen. "Grandma Linda, please help Mommy. Travis is hurting her bad. Please come quick." He hit send. The message flew into the night. Across the city, in a sprawling mansion overlooking the Allegheny River, in the upscale Sewickley Heights neighborhood, Ethan Caldwell sat alone in his study. The room was silent except for the low crackle of the gas fireplace and the occasional tick of the antique clock on the mantel. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the glittering lights of Pittsburgh below a kingdom he ruled from the shadows. Ethan was 38, fair-skinned, with the sharp features of his Irish-American ancestors. Dark hair cropped close, steel-gray eyes that missed nothing. He wore a tailored black shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing corded forearms marked by faint old scars. In the underworld of western Pennsylvania, he was known as the man who controlled construction permits, waste-hauling routes, and half the consulting contracts that kept the city moving. Wealth surrounded him: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, leather-bound books he rarely read, but none of it touched the hollow place inside. 24 years earlier, when he was 14, he had hidden in a closet just like Noah and Emma, while his stepfather beat his mother until she stopped breathing. He had been too small, too terrified to stop it. The guilt had never left. It gnawed at him in quiet moments like this, a constant consuming remorse that no amount of power could silence. His phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but some instinct honed by years of survival, made him open the message. "Grandma Linda, please help Mommy. Travis is hurting her bad. Please come quick." Then another. "We are scared, Mommy," not yelling anymore. 1842 Bedford Avenue, apartment 3C. "Please hurry. I am begging." Ethan's breath caught. A child. A terrified child reaching into the dark. His fingers tightened around the phone. The old wound ripped open, violent tearing. He saw his own 14-year-old self, hands over ears, shaking helpless. He heard his mother's last choked plea. Not again. Never again. He stood so fast the chair scraped back. His voice, when he spoke into the intercom, was ice-cold, controlled. "Tommy, get the crew. We have an address in the Hill District. Domestic. Child involved. Move now." He grabbed his coat, the black wool one that cost more than most people's rent. Outside, the snow had begun, fat flakes drifting through the streetlights. He climbed into the black SUV himself, not waiting for anyone. The engine roared to life. Inside the closet, Noah stared at the phone. It vibrated. "This is not Grandma Linda, but I see your messages. Are you safe right now? Where are you in the apartment?" Noah's heart stuttered. Wrong number. He had ruined it. Tears spilled hot down his cheeks, but another message came. "Noah, answer me now. My name is Ethan. I will help you and your mother. Are you hiding somewhere safe?" The words were calm, steady, like a grown-up who knew exactly what to do. Noah typed back, fingers trembling. "We are in the closet. Door locked. Daddy is hitting the door." The reply was instant. "You did the right thing. You are very brave. Do not open for anyone. Do not make a sound. I am coming. 15 minutes. Can you trust me?" Noah looked at Emma, who clung to him, eyes wide. He thought of Mommy outside alone with the monster. He typed one word. "Yes." In the SUV, Ethan gripped the wheel, jaw clenched. The city blurred past neon signs, empty streets, the glow of the bridges. His mind raced. He pictured the woman Sarah. The messages said her name was Sarah, thin, frightened, protecting her children with nothing but her body. He pictured her eyes, imagined them green like the girl from high school, who once stood between him and a group of bullies, voice soft but firm. Sarah Jennings. The name tugged at something buried deep. He had never forgotten her. The guilt twisted harder. He had failed his mother. He would not fail this one. The car skidded slightly on the icy Hill District streets. He slowed eyes, scanning the rundown buildings, peeling paint, broken windows, trash piled against chain-link fences. He spotted the address. Apartment 3C. He killed the engine. Tommy and 2 others pulled up behind him. Ethan stepped out into the snow coat, open breath fogging the air. His heart pounded not with fear, but with something fiercer. Remorse. Rage. And beneath it all, a sudden, shocking surge of protectiveness for a woman he had not seen in 15 years. He moved toward the building, silent as a shadow. Inside the closet, Noah pressed the phone to his chest. The pounding on the door had stopped. For a moment, silence. Then footsteps retreated. Sarah's voice, weak. "Travis. Leave them alone." A crash. Glass shattering. Noah typed again. "He is breaking things. Mommy sounds hurt. Please hurry." The reply came like a lifeline. "I have 8 minutes. Stay quiet. You are not alone." Sarah slumped against the door, ribs burning, head spinning. She felt the cold seep through the thin walls, through her worn sweater, through her very bones. She had not eaten since yesterday morning, a half can of soup shared with the twins. Her body trembled from hunger, from cold, from terror. She thought of the nights she had walked the streets after shifts, wind cutting through her thin coat just to avoid coming home to this. She thought of the food pantry lines, the shame of asking for help. She thought of how the world had forgotten them, 3 small lives in a city that glittered for others. And now a stranger on a phone promised to come. She did not believe it. She could not. Men like Travis taught you not to hope. But Noah whispered, "Mommy." He said, "Yes, he is coming." Sarah's heart cracked open. A tiny, dangerous spark of something she had not felt in years. Hope. Outside, Ethan reached the 3rd-floor landing. The door to 3C was ajar, splintered at the lock. He stepped inside. The apartment smelled of stale beer, fear, and despair. Travis stood in the middle of the room, swaying bottle in hand. Ethan's voice cut through the air, low and lethal. "Step away from the closet. Now." Travis turned, eyes bleary. "Who the hell are you?" Ethan did not answer with words. He moved. In seconds, Travis was on the floor, groaning, arms pinned. Ethan knelt beside the closet door. Soft knocks. 3 gentle ones. "Sarah, it's Ethan. The one the children texted. You are safe now." Sarah's breath caught. Her hands shook on the lock. She opened the door. There he stood, tall, powerful, fair-skinned eyes, the color of winter steel. But when he looked at her, something softened. A flicker of recognition, of pain, of something deeper, fiercer. Their eyes met, and in that frozen moment, amid the wreckage of her life, Sarah felt the world tilt again, not from pain but from a shock so profound it stole her breath. This man, wealthy, dangerous, broken in his own way, had come for them, and in his gaze she saw not pity. She saw a man already falling hard and fast into a love that would burn everything else away. The snow fell heavier now, thick white flakes swirling in the orange glow of the streetlights on Bedford Avenue. Ethan Caldwell stepped out of the black SUV boots, crunching on the thin crust already forming on the sidewalk. The cold bit at his exposed neck, but he felt nothing. Inside him, something far colder and far hotter burned at the same time. Remorse like a blade twisting slowly between his ribs, and a sudden, ferocious need to protect that he could not name. Tommy Russo and 2 of his men, quiet, broad-shouldered shadows, flanked him without a word. They had done this kind of work before, though never quite like this. Never because a child's trembling text had reached straight into the hollow place Ethan had carried since he was 14. He moved up the narrow stairwell of the crumbling brick building steps, deliberate, silent, paint peeled in long curls from the walls. A single bare bulb flickered overhead, throwing harsh shadows. The smell hit him halfway up, stale, beer, cigarette smoke, something sour and human and hopeless. The scent of poverty so deep it had soaked into the plaster. Apartment 3C. The door hung crooked lock, already splintered from Travis's earlier rage. Ethan pushed it open with the flat of his palm. Inside, the scene froze like a photograph he would never forget. The small living room was chaos. An overturned kitchen chair. Shards of a broken whiskey bottle glittering on the worn linoleum. A woman, Sarah, curled on the floor near the closet door, one arm wrapped protectively around her ribs, the other stretched toward the children even as she struggled to breathe. Her thin sweater was torn at the shoulder. Her face was swelling, one eye already purpling. She looked impossibly small, impossibly fragile, and yet impossibly fierce, in the way she still tried to shield the closet behind her. Travis stood swaying in the center of the room, bottleneck clutched in one meaty fist, eyes bloodshot and wild. "Who the hell?" he started. Ethan did not answer with words. He crossed the space in 3 long strides. Travis swung the bottle. Ethan caught his wrist mid-arc, twisted hard enough to make bone grind but not break. The bottle dropped shattering. In the next heartbeat, Ethan drove a knee into the soft flesh below Travis's ribs, not to kill, not even to cripple, but to fold the man in half. Travis dropped to his knees, gasping, retching. Tommy stepped forward, cuffs already in hand. The other 2 men moved to block the doorway. Ethan knelt beside Sarah. She flinched violently at the movement, arms coming up instinctively to protect her head. A soft, broken sound escaped her throat, not quite a sob, not quite a plea, just pure animal fear. "Sarah," he said, voice low, steady, almost gentle. "It's Ethan," the one Noah texted. "You're safe now." Her good eye widened. Recognition flickered through the haze of pain and terror. She stared at him, really looked, and something cracked open inside her chest. "Ethan. Caldwell." Her voice was barely a whisper, cracked and raw. From school." He nodded once. She tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her side. She gasped, swayed. Ethan reached out slowly, slow enough that she could pull away if she wanted, and caught her shoulders before she collapsed. Her body was so light, too light, bones sharp under thin skin. She smelled faintly of cheap soap and desperation. He could feel every shuddering breath she took, every tremor that ran through her like a current. Inside him, the old guilt roared louder than ever. "This is what you could have stopped," the voice in his head hissed. "This is what you let happen to your own mother because you were too scared. And now another woman, another mother bleeding on the floor because the world keeps letting men like Travis walk free." He swallowed the bile rising in his throat. "I'm getting you out," he said. "All of you." Sarah's gaze darted toward the closet. "The twins, they're okay. They're safe." He rose, still supporting her, and gave a quiet nod to Tommy. Tommy opened the closet door. Noah and Emma were pressed against the back wall, eyes enormous in the dim light. Noah clutched the cracked phone like a lifeline. Emma's small hand gripped her brother's sleeve so tightly the fabric bunched. Ethan crouched to their level. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm Ethan. I came because you asked for help. You did really good, Noah. Really brave." Noah stared at him, tears streaking his dirty cheeks. "Mommy's hurt. I know. I'm going to take care of her. And you. And your sister." "Okay," Emma whimpered. Ethan held out his arms. Slowly trembling, Noah stepped forward. Emma followed, clinging to her brother. Ethan lifted them both 2 small, warm bundles that weighed almost nothing and carried them out of the closet. Sarah watched tears spilling silently down her bruised face. She had spent 5 years learning not to trust. 5 years learning that men with power only used it to take more. 5 years learning that hope was the cruelest lie of all. And yet here was this man, wealthy beyond anything she could imagine, dangerous in ways she could only guess, holding her children like they were made of glass. Tommy finished cuffing Travis, who groaned curses into the floor. One of the other men spoke quietly into a phone, arranging for the police to arrive after they were gone. No sirens, no lights, just clean, efficient removal. Ethan turned back to Sarah. "Can you walk?" she tried. Her legs buckled almost immediately. Pain exploded white behind her eyes. She swayed. Before she could fall, Ethan shifted the twins to one arm, impossibly strong, and scooped her up with the other. She stiffened. I can, no," he said, voice rough with something she could not name. "You can't." He carried her out of the apartment as though she weighed nothing. The hallway light flickered overhead. Snow swirled in through the broken window at the end of the corridor. Outside, the black SUV waited, engine running, heat blasting. Ethan settled Sarah gently in the back seat, then placed Noah and Emma beside her. The children immediately burrowed against their mother, small hands clutching her torn sweater. Sarah looked up at him through the open door. Her voice was very small. "Why?" He paused, one hand on the roof of the car, snow collecting on the shoulders of his expensive coat. "Because a long time ago," he said quietly, "I couldn't save someone who needed me, and I swore I would never let that happen again." Their eyes held. In that suspended heartbeat, something passed between them, something raw, dangerous, and already burning. Sarah felt it like a shockwave. Suspicion warring with a wild, irrational surge of something warmer. Something that terrified her even more than Travis ever had. Ethan felt it too. A violent pull in his chest. Not pity, not duty. Love. Instant. Impossible. Overwhelming. He had known her face for 15 years, had carried the memory of the quiet girl who once defended him in a high school hallway like a secret ember. Now that ember had caught fire. He tore his gaze away before it consumed him entirely. "Tommy, drive." The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb, tires hissing on fresh snow. Inside the car, Sarah wrapped her arms around the twins, rocking them gently. Her body screamed with every movement, ribs faced the hollow ache of hunger that never quite left, but she held them tighter. She looked through the tinted window at the city sliding past, glittering high-rises, expensive restaurants still open, people in warm coats laughing under awnings. A world she had never belonged to. And now this man, this stranger who had once been a boy, she remembered, had pulled her out of hell and was carrying her straight into his. She felt dizzy again. Numb. The edges of her vision blurred. Fear clawed up her throat. What does a man like this want? What price will he ask? But beneath the terror, beneath the confusion, a tiny, traitorous voice whispered, "Maybe nothing. Maybe, just maybe, he really came because he cared." She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. Behind the wheel, Ethan stared straight ahead, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The guilt still tore at him, but now it shared space with something new, something that felt like salvation, and something that already felt like obsession. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Sarah's bruised face rested against the headrest, eyes closed, arms tight around her sleeping children. His heart lurched so hard it hurt. He would protect them. He would burn the world down before he let anyone hurt them again. And God help him, he already knew he would never let her go. The snow kept falling soft and relentless, covering the tracks of the miserable apartment they had left behind. The black SUV glided through the snow-draped streets of Pittsburgh, like a dark ship cutting through fog. Inside, the heater hummed softly, a sound so foreign to Sarah Jennings that it felt almost wrong. Warm air wrapped around her bruised skin, soothing places that had ached for months in the relentless October cold of 2025. She sat rigid in the back seat, one arm around each twin, their small heads resting against her chest. Noah's breathing had steadied into the slow rhythm of exhausted sleep. Emma still sniffled quietly, thumb in her mouth. Sarah could not stop staring at the leather seats soft as butter, the polished wood trim, the faint scent of cedar, and expensive cologne that clung to everything. Her own coat, thrift store wool threadbare at the elbows, felt like a rag in comparison. She had worn the same sweater for 3 days straight, because the laundromat cost $3 she did not have. Her stomach growled a hollow familiar pang she had learned to ignore. The last real meal had been 2 days ago, half a loaf of day-old bread split 3 ways. She glanced sideways at the man in the front passenger seat. Ethan Caldwell. The name echoed in her mind like a half-remembered song. Westinghouse, high 10th grade, the quiet boy with sharp gray eyes who sat in the back row always alone. She remembered the day 3 older boys had cornered him behind the gym, mocking his patched jacket, his second-hand shoes. She had stepped between them, skinny, scared voice shaking, and told them to leave him alone. They had laughed, but they had walked away. He had looked at her after that. Just once. A long, silent look. Then he had disappeared from school a few months later. Rumors said his mother had died. Rumors said worse things after that. And now he was here, carrying her out of hell. The SUV turned onto a winding private road lined with tall evergreens heavy with snow. Iron gates opened silently ahead. Beyond them, a stone mansion rose against the night sky, gray, elegant, lit from within by warm golden windows. Sarah's breath caught. It looked like something from a magazine she could never afford. The vehicle stopped under a covered porte-cochere. Ethan stepped out first, opened the back door himself. "Let me help you," he said, voice low. Sarah hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger. But her legs trembled when she tried to stand. Pain shot through her ribs. She swayed. Ethan slid one arm behind her back, the other under her knees. He lifted her as though she were weightless. She stiffened. I can. You're hurt," he said simply. No argument, no force, just fact. He carried her through double oak doors into a foyer that took her breath away. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. A sweeping staircase curved upward. Oil paintings in heavy frames lined the walls. The warmth hit her like a wave, real heat, steady, luxurious. A middle-aged man in a white coat hurried forward. Dr. Harlan Ethan introduced him quietly. Kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This way," the doctor said. They moved down a hallway lined with soft rugs. Ethan carried her into a room that looked more like a private hospital suite than any medical space Sarah had ever seen. White walls, gentle lighting, a wide hospital bed already turned down. Medical equipment stood discreetly in corners. Monitors, IV stands, cabinets of supplies. Ethan laid her down with infinite care. The mattress gave beneath her like a cloud. She had slept on a mattress so thin she could feel the springs for years. The twins were ushered in by a gentle older woman, Rosa, Ethan's aunt, he said, who immediately wrapped them in thick blankets and led them to a small adjoining room with 2 child-sized beds. Sarah tried to sit up. "My babies. They're safe," Ethan said. "Rosa will stay with them. She raised me. She knows what children need." Sarah's throat closed. She nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Dr. Harlan began his examination. Gentle hands, soft questions. Sarah answered in whispers, voice timid, polite, the way she spoke to anyone who held power over her life. When he lifted her sweater to check her ribs, shame flooded her. Her skin was pale, ribs stark under malnourished flesh. Old bruises layered beneath new ones, yellow, purple, green. A map of years. Dr. Harlan's face tightened. Multiple fractures, concussion, severe bruising, malnutrition, exhaustion. He looked at Ethan. "She needs rest, pain management, nutrition. And the little girl, Emma, I want to run tests tomorrow. Something isn't right with her breathing pattern." Sarah's heart seized. She's always been a little wheezy. Travis said it was nothing. Said doctors cost too much. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard a muscle ticked. Inside him, the guilt roared louder than ever. He pictured his own mother lying on a cheap hospital bed, doctors shaking their heads. He pictured himself 14, helpless, listening to her last breaths. Never again. He stepped closer to the bed. "Whatever she needs," he told the doctor. "Everything. Tonight if possible." Dr. Harlan nodded and began setting up an IV. Sarah watched Ethan. He stood near the window now, arms crossed, staring out at the snow. His shoulders were rigid, knuckles white. She spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" He turned. Their eyes met. For a long moment neither spoke. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt beside the bed so their faces were level. "Because 15 years ago," he said, voice rough, "a girl stood between me and 3 guys who wanted to hurt me. She was scared. She was shaking. But she didn't run. She spoke up." Sarah's breath hitched. "I never forgot that," he continued. "I looked for you after my mother died. You were gone. I thought I'd lost my chance to say thank you. And now, His voice cracked just once, barely audible. Now you're here, bleeding, starving, protecting your children the way my mother tried to protect me. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. I don't understand, she whispered. Men like you don't help women like me, not for free. His gray eyes darkened, pain, remorse, and something fiercer. I don't want anything, he said. I swear it on my mother's grave. The words landed like stones in still water. Sarah stared at him. Suspicion warred with a wild, irrational longing. She had spent so many nights cold, hungry, terrified, so many nights wondering if anyone in the world would ever see her as more than a burden. And now this man, wealthy, powerful, broken in ways she could feel, looked at her like she was something precious. Her heart tore itself open. Fear, gratitude, confusion, and beneath it all, a sudden burning heat she did not understand. Ethan felt it too. He reached out slowly, carefully, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was electric. Sarah gasped softly. Ethan froze, hand still hovering near her face. Inside him a storm raged, guilt screaming that he had no right, desire roaring that he had waited 15 years for this moment. He pulled back, standing abruptly. Rest, he said, voice thick. I'll be right outside. He left the room. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, eyes closed, breathing hard. The love had ignited the moment he saw her face in that wretched apartment. It burned now, fierce, consuming, terrifying. He would protect her. He would heal her. And God help him, he would never let her go. Inside the room, Sarah lay still, IV dripping warmth seeping into bones that had forgotten what warmth felt like. She touched the place on her cheek where his thumb had been. Tears fell again, quiet, endless. For the first time in years, she let herself hope, and the hope hurt worse than any bruise. The first week inside the Sewickley Heights mansion passed like a dream. Sarah Jennings did not dare believe was real. Each morning she woke between crisp white sheets that smelled faintly of lavender sunlight slipping through heavy velvet curtains in soft golden bars across the floor. For several long seconds, she would lie still, heart racing, waiting for the familiar snarl of Travis's voice, the stink of stale whiskey, the cold draft that had seeped through every crack in the Hill District apartment for so many winters. But there was only quiet, deep, expensive quiet, the kind of silence that money could buy. Her body began to mend. Dr. Harlan came twice a day, gentle professional, never once looking at her with pity. Pain medication dulled the sharp edges of her cracked ribs. Nutrient-rich meals arrived on trays, warm oatmeal with fresh berries, chicken broth thick with vegetables, soft scrambled eggs that slid down her throat like forgiveness. She ate slowly at first, stomach cramping from disuse, tears slipping silently into her napkin because she could not remember the last time food had tasted like hope instead of survival. The twins blossomed in ways that broke her heart open wider every day. Rosa, Ethan's aunt, silver-haired, warm-eyed, became their second mother without ever asking permission. She taught Noah how to stack wooden blocks into tall towers in the sunlit playroom, laughing when they tumbled. She read Emma storybooks with different voices for every character until the little girl's wheezy breathing eased into soft giggles. On the fourth day, Dr. Harlan confirmed what Sarah had feared for years. Emma's congenital heart defect had gone undiagnosed and untreated because Travis had cashed every medical assistance check for gambling money. Ethan arranged the surgery at UPMC Children's Hospital within 48 hours. No paperwork, no waiting lists. Just a quiet phone call, a private wing, and the best pediatric cardiologist in Pennsylvania. Sarah watched from the doorway as they wheeled her daughter away, tiny hand clutching a stuffed rabbit Rosa had given her. She felt her knees buckle. Rosa caught her, held her upright, whispering, "She'll be fine, sweetheart. She's in the best hands." When Emma came back, small chest bandaged but color already returning to her cheeks, Sarah sobbed so hard she could barely breathe. Not from pain, from relief so profound it felt like drowning. And through it all, Ethan was there. Not hovering, not demanding. Always at the edges, watching, protecting, disappearing when she needed space, reappearing the moment she faltered. He brought her books from the mansion's vast library, soft paperbacks with worn spines, stories about brave women who found their way out of darkness. He sat with the twins in the evenings, letting Noah drive his big hands across the carpet like trucks, listening to Emma's shy stories about princesses who saved themselves. Sarah watched him from doorways from behind half-closed eyes, heart twisting in ways she could not name. He was wealthy beyond imagination. The kind of wealth that showed in small, devastating details, the cashmere throw he draped over her shoulders. One chilly evening without a word. The heated floors that warmed her bare feet when she padded downstairs at 3 a.m. Unable to sleep, the quiet hum of the security system that meant no one could ever hurt them here. And he was powerful. She saw it in the way his men straightened when he entered a room. In the low-clipped phone calls, She overheard orders given without raising his voice, yet obeyed instantly. In the way, rival factions suddenly went silent after a single night when Ethan left the estate in his black SUV and returned before dawn, coat flecked with snow eyes stormy. One night she heard it from her window, raised voices in the driveway below. A man in a leather jacket, someone from the Southside crew trying to muscle in on construction permits, shouting threats. Ethan stepped out alone. No gun visible. No raised voice. Just words, low and lethal. The man backed away, pale hands up. By morning, the newspapers carried a small item. A Southside warehouse fire cause undetermined. No injuries, just a message. Sarah's stomach twisted. Fear, curiosity, a strange, shameful thrill. She should have run. She should have taken the twins and disappeared into the city the moment she could stand. But every time she thought of leaving, she looked at Noah, laughing at Emma, breathing easier at the warmth that wrapped around them like arms she had never known. And she stayed. On the evening of the 21st day, snow fell again, soft, steady, blanketing the estate grounds in white silence. The twins were asleep. Rosa had retired to her suite. Sarah could not sleep. She slipped downstairs in borrowed slippers, soft, plush, impossibly luxurious, and found Ethan in the library, fire crackling low in the hearth. He sat in a leather armchair, glass of whiskey untouched on the side table, staring into the flames. He looked up when she entered. Couldn't sleep, he asked quietly. She shook her head. I keep waiting for it to end. For you to tell me the price. He rose slowly, crossed the room, stopped several feet away, always giving her space. There is no price, Sarah. She wrapped her arms around herself. The borrowed silk robe his aunts felt too rich against her skin. I don't believe you. I've never had anything without a cost. His gray eyes darkened. Pain flickered there, deep, old, violent. I know what it's like, he said, voice rough, to believe kindness is a trap. My stepfather taught me that. He taught me with fists and silence. And when my mother... He stopped, swallowed. When she died because I was too scared to stop him, I learned the real cost of doing nothing. Sarah's throat closed. He took one careful step closer. I've spent 24 years building walls. Power. Money. Fear. Anything to make sure no one could ever hurt what was mine again. And then a wrong number text came through at midnight, and I saw your name. Sarah. The girl who once stood between me and pain. And I knew if I didn't come, if I didn't act, I would carry that failure for another 24 years. Tears burned her eyes. I'm not a good man, he continued, voice dropping to a whisper. The things I've done, the things I still do, they'd make you run if you knew. But with you, with Noah, with Emma, I want to be different. I want to be the man who keeps the promise I couldn't keep when I was 14. The fire popped softly. Sarah stared at him. Her heart hammered fear, wonder, and something hotter, deeper, more dangerous. She stepped forward. Just one small step. Their eyes locked. In that suspended moment, the room shrank to the space between them. Ethan's hand lifted, slow, trembling, and cupped her cheek. His thumb brushed the fading bruise beneath her eye. Sarah did not flinch. She leaned into the touch. A soft sound escaped her, half sob, half sigh. Ethan's control shattered. He pulled her close, gentle, reverent, and kissed her. It was not gentle. It was desperate. Hungry. Years of waiting poured into one burning press of lips. Sarah's hands fisted in his shirt. She kissed him back, fierce, frightened, alive for the first time in forever. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, Ethan whispered against her mouth, I love you. I've loved you since the day you saved me in that hallway. And I will burn this city down before I let anyone hurt you again. Sarah's tears fell freely. She did not say it back. Not yet. But she did not pull away. She stayed in his arms, letting the warmth of him chase away the cold she had carried for so long. Outside, the snow continued to fall, quiet, relentless, covering the world in white. Inside, two broken people began slowly, impossibly to heal. The days blurred into one another inside the mansion, each one softer, warmer, more impossible than the last. October of 2025 slipped toward its end, the snow outside growing thicker, the wind sharper against the tall windows. Yet inside Ethan Caldwell's world, nothing could touch them. Sarah felt the contrast like a physical ache. She had spent so many nights shivering under thin blankets in that freezing Hill District apartment, listening to the wind whistle through broken panes, holding the twins close to share what little body heat they had. Now she woke each morning to sunlight filtering through silk drapes, to the faint scent of fresh coffee drifting up from the kitchen, to Rosa's gentle voice singing lullabies to Noah and Emma downstairs. Her body continued to heal. The bruises faded from angry purple to pale yellow. The sharp stab in her ribs dulled to a distant throb. Dr. Harlan had marveled quietly at how quickly she was mending once she had real food, real rest, real safety. Real safety. The phrase itself felt like a foreign language. She had never known it. She caught glimpses of herself in the full-length mirror in the guest suite bathroom, cheeks filling out slightly, eyes brighter, skin no longer sallow from constant hunger and cold. Yet every time she looked, shame flooded her. She still felt thin, fragile, unworthy of the plush towels, the heated marble under her feet, the silk robe that slipped over her shoulders like liquid. She had once stood in line at the food pantry for hours in the raincoat soaked through, only to be told they had run out of diapers for the twins. She had walked home empty-handed, tears freezing on her cheeks while the city lights twinkled indifferently above. And now she lived in a house where fresh flowers arrived weekly, where the pantry shelves groaned under abundance, where no one ever said we're out. The unfairness of it tore at her. She tried to earn her keep. She helped Rosa in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with careful, trembling hands, learning to fold dough for fresh bread. Rosa never asked her to. Sarah simply needed to do something, anything, to quiet the voice inside that whispered she did not belong here. Ethan watched her during those quiet moments. He stood in doorways, arms crossed, gray eyes following every careful movement she made. He saw the way her shoulders hunched when she thought no one was looking, the way she flinched at sudden noises even now, the way she whispered, "Thank you" to the staff, as though expecting them to demand payment later. Each time his heart twisted violently. He had built an empire on fear and control. He had crushed men who dared challenge him quietly, efficiently, without ever raising his voice in public. Just last week, on a snow-slick street near the Monongahela River, a rival from the North Side faction had tried to corner him after a late meeting. 4 men in dark coats, hands in pockets, blocking the alley. Ethan had stepped forward alone, voice calm, lethal. Words exchanged. A single cold sentence. The men had backed away, faces pale, disappearing into the night. By morning, their boss had called to apologize, voice shaking. Power. Always power. But with Sarah, power meant nothing. He wanted to give her everything, and he feared that everything would frighten her away. The first real crack came on a snowy Thursday evening, the 28th day. The twins were asleep. Rosa had retired early. The mansion settled into its deep, expensive hush. Sarah wandered into the library, unable to sleep again. She found Ethan there, as she often did, fire low, whiskey glass untouched, staring into the flames. He looked up. Their eyes met. No words at first. She crossed the room slowly, barefoot on the thick Persian rug. The borrowed silk robe whispered against her legs. She stopped in front of him. "I can't stop thinking," she whispered. "About what you said. About the hallway. About everything." Ethan stood. Slowly. Carefully. "I meant every word." She looked up at him, small, fragile, yet fierce in her quiet way. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "I've never had anyone look at me the way you do. Like I matter." "You do matter," he said roughly. "More than you know." The air between them thickened. Sarah's hand lifted, hesitant, shaking, and rested against his chest. She felt the steady, powerful beat of his heart beneath the crisp black shirt. Ethan's control snapped. He caught her wrist gently, then slid his hand up to cup her face. His thumb traced the fading scar on her cheekbone. Sarah closed her eyes. When he kissed her this time, it was slower, deeper, full of everything they had both held back for too long. She melted against him. Her fingers curled into his shirt. A soft, broken sound escaped her throat. They kissed like people who had been starving for years. When they finally parted, foreheads pressed together, breathing ragged, Ethan whispered against her lips, "I love you, Sarah. I've loved you since that day in the hallway. And I'm terrified I'll ruin this. That my world, my life, will hurt you more than Travis ever did." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm terrified too," she whispered. "But I don't want to run anymore." He kissed her again, fiercer, this time lifting her against him. Her legs wrapped around his waist instinctively. He carried her to the deep leather sofa by the fire, laying her down, gently covering her body with his own. They did not speak again for a long time. Only touches, whispers, the quiet crackle of the fire. When they finally stilled, tangled together under the cashmere throw, Sarah rested her head on his chest. "I've never felt safe before," she murmured. "You are now," he said, voice raw. "Always." But safety was fragile. The next morning, the first threat came. Sarah's old phone, retrieved from the apartment by one of Ethan's men, buzzed on the nightstand. "Unknown number," she answered, heart already pounding. Travis's voice slurred, furious, filled the line. "You think you can hide, Sarah. You think that rich bastard can keep you. I know where you are. I'll take the kids. They're mine. You hear me? I'll burn that fancy house down if I have to." The call ended. Sarah dropped the phone. Her hands shook so violently she could not breathe. Ethan found her minutes later curled on the bedroom floor, rocking silently, tears streaming. He dropped to his knees beside her. "What happened?" she told him. Word for word. His face went cold stone, but inside rage and remorse collided in a violent storm. He had failed his mother. He would not fail Sarah. He pulled her into his arms. "I'll handle it," he said quietly. That night he left the estate. He met Travis's parole officer in a quiet diner near the river. Cash changed hands, quiet words exchanged. A no-contact order was filed by morning. Police cruisers appeared outside Travis's halfway house. A restraining order was served, but Ethan knew men like Travis did not stop. He stood on the mansion balcony later, snow falling around him, staring at the city lights below. The guilt still gnawed, but now it fought against something stronger. Love, fierce, burning, unbreakable. He would protect them, even if it cost him everything. Inside, Sarah lay awake, listening to the twins' soft breathing in the next room. She touched her lips, still swollen from his kisses. Fear and wonder warred inside her. She had gone from nothing to everything in weeks, and she knew deep in her bruised, healing heart that she was already lost to him. Completely. Irrevocably. The snow of late October 2025 had melted into gray slush by the time the first legal papers arrived at the mansion. A plain white envelope delivered by a courier who looked distinctly uncomfortable standing on the marble steps of Ethan Caldwell's estate. Rosa accepted it with her usual calm politeness, but her eyes darkened when she saw the return address, Allegheny County Family Court. Sarah was in the kitchen helping Rosa roll out dough for cinnamon rolls when the envelope was brought in. The warm scent of yeast and sugar filled the air, a fragrance so rich and comforting that Sarah sometimes still paused mid-motion, eyes closing, remembering nights when the twins had gone to bed with nothing but water in their stomachs, because the grocery budget had run dry 3 days early. Rosa opened the envelope carefully. Her face tightened as she scanned the pages. "Sarah, sweetheart," she said softly, "you should sit down." Sarah's hands froze on the rolling pin. A cold prickle ran down her spine. She wiped flour from her palms and lowered herself onto one of the high stools at the island. Her legs felt unsteady the way they had on those long walks home from the dollar store when her shoes had holes and the wind cut straight through her thin coat. The papers were a petition for emergency custody. Travis Jennings, the man who had once told her she was lucky he kept her around at all, was demanding visitation rights and primary custody of Noah and Emma. The document claimed Sarah was living in an unstable environment with a known criminal associate, and that she was unfit to provide a stable home. Attached was a notarized statement from Travis asserting that he had been the primary caregiver and that Sarah had abducted the children. Sarah read the words once, then again the letters blurring as tears filled her eyes. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The kitchen, so bright and warm, suddenly felt too small, too bright, suffocating. "He can't," she whispered. "He can't take them. He never even changed a diaper. He never... Rosa knelt beside her, taking both of Sarah's trembling hands. "He won't," Rosa said firmly. "Ethan is already on the phone with his attorney. This will not stand," but the fear had already taken root. Sarah spent the rest of the day in a numb haze. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, folding tiny socks, reading the same picture book to the twins 3 times without registering the words, staring out at the snow-dusted gardens until her eyes burned. Every time she looked at Noah's quiet smile, or Emma's newly healthy color panic clawed up her throat. How could the courts even consider giving that man access? How could the system that had failed her for years suddenly decide he deserved another chance? That evening, Ethan found her in the twins' playroom. She sat on the floor, surrounded by scattered blocks, staring at nothing. He crouched beside her. "Sarah." She flinched at his voice, then looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "He's going to take them," she whispered. "He'll tell the judge I'm living with a criminal, and he'll be right." Ethan's jaw tightened. Inside him, the old guilt roared back to life, sharper, now edged with something new terror. Not for himself. For her. For the children. For the fragile happiness they had only just begun to build. He reached out slowly and took her hands. "He won't win," he said quietly. "I have the best family law attorney in Pittsburgh. We're pulling every record. Every hospital visit you never reported. Every time he cashed Emma's medical assistance checks instead of getting her treatment." Sarah's breath hitched. You found that?" Ethan nodded. "Grace, my investigator, dug into his bank records. He deposited thousands in cash over the last 3 years. Money meant for her heart condition. Money he spent on poker games and whiskey." Sarah's tears fell freely now. Shame and rage warred inside her. She had known, deep down she had known, but hearing it spoken aloud felt like a fresh wound. "I should have left sooner," she choked out. "I should have fought harder. I was weak." Ethan's hands tightened around hers. "You were surviving," he said fiercely. "You kept them alive. You kept them safe enough to send that text. That's not weakness. That's strength I can't even imagine." He pulled her into his arms. She buried her face against his chest, sobbing quietly, while he held her one hand stroking her hair. For long minutes they stayed like that, two broken people clinging to each other in the soft glow of the playroom nightlight. When her tears slowed, Ethan cupped her face and kissed her slow, deep, full of everything he could not yet say. "I love you," he whispered against her lips, "and I will tear down anyone who tries to take your children from you." Sarah kissed him back, desperate, hungry, as though she could pour all her fear into him and let him carry it. Later that night, after the twins were asleep and the mansion had settled into its deep hush, Ethan stepped outside into the cold. He met Grace Donovan under the porte-cochere. She handed him a thick folder. "It's worse than we thought," she said quietly. "Travis has been talking to a lawyer who specializes in fathers' rights cases. They're preparing to argue that your reputation makes this an unsafe environment. They're naming you specifically." Ethan flipped through the pages. His face remained calm. Inside, rage and remorse collided in a violent storm. He had spent years building a wall of fear around himself so no one could touch what was his. Now that wall threatened to crush the woman he loved and the children he already thought of as his own. He looked up at the night sky, snowflakes drifting past the security lights. "I want everything," he said. Every missed medical appointment, every gambling debt, every time he laid a hand on her. "I want it all ready for the hearing." Grace nodded. "We'll have it by next week." Ethan returned inside. He found Sarah waiting in the hallway outside the twins' room, arms wrapped around herself. She looked small, fragile, yet determined. "They won't take them," she whispered. "I won't let them." He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her close. "No," he said against her hair. "They won't." But the fear did not leave her. It grew quietly, relentlessly, every time she looked at the twins' sleeping faces, every time she remembered the nights she had hidden in that closet, with them praying Travis would pass out before he found them. And every time Ethan kissed her, held her, promised her the world, the fear twisted into something else, a desperate, burning need to believe him. To believe that love, real, fierce, impossible love, could finally be enough. That night, as snow fell silently outside the tall windows, Sarah lay in Ethan's arms in the master suite for the first time. His heartbeat was steady beneath her cheek. She traced the faint scar on his forearm, old, silvered. "What happened here?" she whispered. "My stepfather," he said quietly. "When I was 12. He threw a bottle. I didn't duck fast enough." Sarah's throat closed. She pressed her lips to the scar. "I'm sorry," she breathed. Ethan's arms tightened around her. "I'm sorry too," he whispered. "For every day you suffered alone. For every night you were cold and hungry and scared." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I don't know how to be loved like this," she admitted. "Then let me teach you," he said, voice rough with emotion. He kissed her again, slow, deep, reverent. And in that quiet firelit room, 2 people who had known too much pain began to learn what safety felt like. Outside, the snow kept falling soft, relentless, covering the world in white. Inside, love burned brighter than ever. But the war was only beginning. The first week of November, 2025, brought a brittle cold to Pittsburgh, the kind that seeped through even the thickest windows of the mansion, and reminded Sarah Jennings of too many winters spent huddled under a single thin blanket with the twins, their small bodies pressed against hers for warmth that never quite came. She had known nights when the wind rattled the loose panes of the Hill District apartment so hard she feared the glass would shatter, nights when she stayed awake counting the hours until the dollar store opened so she could earn enough for another bag of rice. Now the mansion's heating system hummed steadily, invisible and perfect, wrapping every room in gentle warmth. Yet the contrast only deepened the ache inside her. How could the world allow such unfairness? How could she have suffered so long, while others lived like this every day? The twins continued to thrive. Emma's post-surgery checkups showed steady improvement. Her breathing grew stronger, her color brighter. Noah had begun to speak in full sentences again, asking questions about the big house, about the snow, about Mr. Ethan, who read him truck stories every night. Sarah watched them with a heart so full it hurt. Every laugh they gave felt stolen from the years of silence and fear. But the custody petition hung over them like smoke that refused to clear. Ethan spent long hours in his office phone, pressed to his ear, voice low and controlled as he coordinated with lawyers, investigators, and contacts Sarah did not want to know about. She saw the tension in the set of his shoulders, the way his gray eyes darkened when he thought no one watched. He carried the weight of his world on those broad shoulders, and now he carried hers too. One evening, as the early winter dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, Ethan came to find her in the solarium. She sat curled in an oversized armchair, a soft throw blanket draped over her knees, staring at the snow-dusted gardens beyond the glass. The twins were upstairs with Rosa napping, after a day of building snowmen with her in the heated greenhouse. Ethan stood in the doorway for a long moment, simply watching her. Sarah felt his presence before she saw him, the quiet shift in the air, the way the room seemed to still around him. She turned her head. "You're home early." He crossed the room, knelt beside her chair, and took her hands. His were warm, calloused in places from years of handling things she preferred not to imagine. "I have news," he said quietly. Her stomach dropped. "Bad. Complicated." He handed her a slim folder. Grace Donovan's neat handwriting labeled the tab Jennings Travis, medical and financial. Sarah opened it with trembling fingers. The first page was a hospital report dated 3 weeks earlier. Advanced alcoholic liver disease. Cirrhosis. End stage. Prognosis 6 to 12 months without transplant, less with continued drinking. Travis had been hospitalized twice in the last year, once for internal bleeding, once for severe jaundice. Both times he had left against medical advice. Sarah's breath caught. She flipped to the next page, bank statements showing withdrawals from Emma's medical assistant's account, deposits into gambling apps, bar tabs, liquor store receipts. She closed the folder. Her hands shook so badly the papers rustled. "He's dying," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "And he knows it." The silence stretched between them, thick, heavy, suffocating. Sarah stared at the folder as though it might bite her. "He's dying. And instead of trying to get better, he's trying to take my children." The words came out small, broken. Tears welled up hot and fast. Ethan's jaw clenched. Inside him, the storm raged harder than ever. Remorse for every moment he had not been there to protect her sooner. Rage at a man who would rather destroy than heal. And beneath it all, a fierce, possessive love that terrified him with its intensity. "He wants to punish you," Ethan said quietly. "He knows he's losing. He knows the courts will see the fraud, the neglect, the violence. So he's planning something final. Something that makes sure no one else gets what he thinks belongs to him." Sarah's face drained of color. "The children..." Ethan cupped her face gently. "He won't touch them. I swear it." But Sarah pulled away, standing abruptly. She paced the solarium arms, wrapped tight around herself as though holding her own pieces together. "I should have seen it," she whispered. "All those nights he drank himself into oblivion. All the times he said he felt sick, that it was my fault. I thought he was just cruel. I didn't know." She stopped swaying. The room tilted. Nausea rose sharp and sudden. Ethan was at her side in an instant, steadying her. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe." She clung to him, shaking. "I hate him. I hate that even now, even dying, he's still trying to hurt us. It's not fair. None of it was ever fair." Ethan held her tighter. "No," he agreed, voice rough. "It wasn't." He guided her to the window seat, sat beside her, pulled her into his lap. She curled against him like a wounded thing, face buried in the crook of his neck. They stayed that way for a long time, quiet, condensed stillness amid the storm. When she finally spoke again, her voice was small, timid. "I don't know how to feel. Part of me wants to pity him. The other part wants him to suffer like we suffered." Ethan's arms tightened. "You don't have to feel anything you don't want to. You owe him nothing." She lifted her head, eyes searching his. "But you're fighting for us. Risking everything. Why?" He looked at her, really looked, and the last of his walls crumbled. "Because I love you," he said simply. "Because the moment I read that text, I knew I'd found the one thing worth burning my whole life down to protect. Because 15 years ago you saved me without knowing it, and now I finally get to return the favor." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared he'll find a way. I'm scared this happiness is a dream I'll wake up from." Ethan kissed her, slow, deep, fierce. "Then let me be your anchor," he murmured against her lips. "Let me hold you through the storm." She kissed him back, desperate, hungry, pouring every ounce of fear and hope into the connection between them. When they parted breathless, Sarah rested her forehead against his. "I love you too," she whispered, the words she had held back for weeks. "I love you so much it hurts." Ethan's heart stuttered. For a moment he could not speak. The guilt, the remorse, the violence inside him, all of it quieted under the weight of those words. He kissed her again, gentler this time, reverent. Outside, the early winter night deepened. Snow began to fall again, soft, relentless. Inside, two people clung to each other in the quiet glow of the solarium, hearts torn open, and slowly, painfully beginning to heal. But the storm was not over. Grace's final report arrived the next morning. Travis had been seen purchasing a handgun from a private seller in the South Hills. No registration, cash only. Ethan read the words once, then twice. His face went cold. Inside, the old 14-year-old boy screamed. Not again. Never again. He stood folder in hand and walked to the solarium where Sarah sat reading to the twins. She looked up at him, smile fading when she saw his expression. Ethan. He crossed to her, knelt, and took her hands. Whatever happens next, he said quietly, remember one thing. She nodded, eyes wide. I will protect you, he said. All three of you. With everything I have. Sarah squeezed his hands. I know, she whispered. And in that moment, love burned brighter than fear. But the night was coming. And Travis Jennings, dying, desperate, vengeful, was already moving through the shadows. The night of November 4th, 2025, arrived with a sudden punishing rain that lashed the windows of the Sewickley Heights mansion like fists. The storm had rolled in from the Ohio River Valley without warning, dark clouds boiling overhead, thunder rumbling low and angry. Inside, the house felt sealed against the world, thick stone walls, triple-pane glass, the steady hum of the security system that Ethan had triple-checked before midnight. Sarah could not sleep. She lay in the master suite beside Ethan, listening to his, even breathing, feeling the warmth of his arm draped across her waist. The twins slept in the adjoining nursery, Emma's soft snores and Noah's quiet murmurs drifting through the cracked door. For weeks, Sarah had carried the weight of the custody petition like a stone in her chest, but tonight the dread felt sharper, more physical. She kept seeing Travis's face in her mind, not the drunken, raging man she had fled, but a thinner, hollow-eyed version driven by something worse than anger, the knowledge that time was running out. She slipped from the bed, carefully pulling on Ethan's cashmere robe, too large, too soft, smelling faintly of his cologne. Barefoot, she padded down the hallway to check on the children one more time. The nursery nightlight cast gentle shadows across their faces. Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit. Noah had kicked off his blanket as usual. Sarah tucked it back around him, brushing a curl from his forehead. Her heart ached with a love so fierce it hurt. She turned to leave and froze. A small sound. Almost nothing. A faint click from the direction of the back staircase. Her blood turned to ice. She moved without thinking, quick back to the master suite. Ethan was already sitting up, eyes open, alert in the darkness. Sarah, something's wrong, she whispered. I heard he was out of bed in an instant, pulling on dark pants and a black sweater. He pressed a silent alarm panel beside the door. Somewhere in the house, soft red lights began to pulse. Stay here, he said, voice low and lethal. No. Her voice trembled but held. If it's him, if it's Travis, I won't let him near them alone. Ethan looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression shifted pride, fear, and a burning resolve that made her heart stutter. He took her hand. Together then. They moved down the hall like shadows. Ethan first, Sarah close behind. The mansion felt different now, too large, too many corners, too many places to hide. They reached the back staircase. The door to the rooftop access, normally locked, was ajar. Rain hammered the metal stairs beyond. Ethan pushed the door open slowly. The rooftop was a flat expanse of stone edged with a low parapet and a few potted evergreens that thrashed in the wind. Rain poured in sheets. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the scene for one blinding second. Travis stood near the parapet. He was thinner than Sarah remembered, cheeks sunken, eyes fever bright. Rain plastered his hair to his skull. In his arms, he held both twins, one under each arm, small bodies limp, unconscious from whatever he had used to silence them. Emma's head lolled against his shoulder. Noah's tiny hands dangled. Sarah's world narrowed to that single image. A sound tore from her throat, raw animal beyond words. Travis turned. His eyes found her through the rain. You thought you could take them, he shouted over the storm. You thought that rich bastard could buy what's mine. Ethan stepped forward, hands raised, voice steady despite the rain streaming down his face. Put them down, Travis. Whatever you do to me, don't do this to them. Travis laughed, harsh, broken. You don't get it, do you? I'm dying. Liver's gone. Doctors gave me months. And I'm not going alone. If I can't have them, no one will. Sarah's knees buckled. She caught herself on the doorframe. Dizziness crashed over her black spots, dancing at the edges of her vision. She felt sick, numb, as though her body had left her behind. Please, she whispered. The word was lost in the rain, but she tried again louder. Please, Travis. They're just babies. Let them go. Travis's face twisted. You never wanted me to be their father. You took them and ran to him. I ran to keep them alive, Sarah cried. You hurt us. Every day. You starved them. You scared them. You almost killed Emma by stealing her medicine money. Travis swayed. The gun in his hand, black, wet, trembling, came up. Sarah stepped forward. Rain soaked her instantly, plastering the robe to her skin. If you want to hurt someone, she said, voice shaking but clear, hurt me. But don't touch my children. You'll have to kill me first. Lightning flashed again. Travis's face looked ghastly, pale, sick, desperate. Ethan moved slow, deliberate. "Travis," he said. "Look at me." Travis swung the gun toward him. "You," he snarled. "You stole everything. My wife, my kids, my life." "I didn't steal them," Ethan said quietly. "You lost them the first time you raised your hand." Travis's finger tightened on the trigger. Sarah screamed. In that instant, two things happened at once. Ethan lunged low fast, tackling Travis around the waist. The gun fired a sharp crack, swallowed by thunder. The bullet went wide, sparking off the stone parapet. Travis staggered. The twins slipped from his grasp. Sarah ran, slipping on wet stone, falling to her knees, gathering Noah and Emma into her arms. She shielded them with her body rocking, sobbing, whispering, it's okay, Mommy's here." Behind her, Ethan and Travis struggled in the rain. Travis was weaker, sick, drunk, dying, but desperation gave him strength. He clawed at Ethan's face, screaming incoherently. Ethan pinned him, knee in his back, arm twisted behind. "Stay down," Ethan growled. Travis laughed, wet, choking. "You can't stop it. I'm already dead. And they'll never be yours." Sirens rose in the distance, growing louder, closer. Ethan's men had called it in the moment the rooftop door opened. Police swarmed the estate minutes later, lights flashing through the rain, officers in heavy coats rushing up the stairs. Travis was cuffed, dragged away, still muttering curses and threats. He collapsed halfway down the stairs, liver finally giving out under the strain. Paramedics loaded him into an ambulance. He never made it to the hospital. Sarah sat on the wet stone twins, clutched to her chest, rain pouring over all three of them. Ethan knelt beside her. He pulled off his soaked sweater, wrapped it around the children, then wrapped his arms around all of them. Sarah looked up at him, face streaked with rain and tears. "He's gone," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "He can't hurt you anymore." Sarah's body shook with sobs. Relief, terror, grief, exhaustion, crashing over her in waves. Ethan held her tighter. "I thought I'd lose them," she choked out. "I thought I'd lose everything." "Never," he said fiercely. "Never again." He kissed her forehead, her temple, her trembling lips, gentle, reverent, full of everything he could not yet say. The rain kept falling, but inside Ethan's chest something finally broke open. Not guilt, not remorse, love fierce, consuming, eternal. He lifted Sarah and the twins in his arms, strong, steady, and carried them back inside. The storm raged on outside, but in that moment the war was over. They were safe. They were home. Word count approximately 1,500. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn on November 5th, 2025, leaving Pittsburgh wrapped in a cold, dripping stillness. Inside the mansion, the air felt heavy with the aftermath. Wet footprints tracked across marble floors, discarded blankets piled in corners, the faint metallic scent of fear lingering like smoke. Sarah sat on the edge of the master bed, wrapped in one of Ethan's thick terry robes, the twins finally asleep again in the nursery, under Rosa's watchful eye. Paramedics had checked them mild sedation from whatever Travis had forced them to swallow, nothing permanent. They would wake groggy but whole. Sarah's hands still shook when she tried to hold a glass of water. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Travis's face in the lightning flash, saw her children dangling from his sick, desperate grip, saw the rooftop parapet only inches away from a 30-foot drop. She had almost lost them. Again. The thought kept circling, tearing fresh wounds inside her chest. Ethan stood across the room, back to her, staring out the tall window at the dark garden. His shirt clung damply to his shoulders. He had not changed since carrying them downstairs. His posture was rigid, shoulders squared, hands clenched at his sides. She could see the faint tremor in his fingers from across the room. She spoke first, voice small and raw. He almost took them. Ethan's head bowed slightly. When he turned, his gray eyes were stormy, guilt and rage, and something deeper churning behind them. "I should have seen it coming sooner," he said quietly. "I should have had more men on the perimeter. I should have—" "Stop!" Sarah's voice cracked. She stood legs unsteady and crossed the carpet toward him. "You saved them. You saved us." Again. He looked down at her, really looked, and the mask he wore for the world cracked wide open. "I keep seeing it," he whispered. "The rooftop. The gun. The way you stepped forward. I keep seeing my mother's face instead of yours. I keep hearing her last breath instead of your scream." Sarah reached up, trembling fingers brushing the line of his jaw. "You were 14, she said softly. "You were a child. You couldn't have stopped him then. I should have tried." The words came out rough, torn. For the first time since she had known him, Ethan Caldwell looked vulnerable, stripped bare, the powerful man reduced to the terrified boy who had hidden in a closet while his world ended. Sarah's heart shattered all over again. She stepped closer, wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her cheek to his chest. "I'm here," she whispered. "We're here. Because of you." Ethan's arms came around her slowly, as though he feared she might break or disappear. He buried his face in her hair. "I love you," he said, voice thick. "I love you so much it hurts. And I'm terrified that loving you will destroy you." Sarah pulled back just enough to look up at him. "Then let it destroy the parts of us that are broken," she said, "and let it build something new." His eyes searched hers, gray storm meeting green sea. Then he kissed her. Not gentle, not careful, desperate, hungry, full of every unspoken fear and every unspoken promise. Sarah kissed him back with the same ferocity, hands fisting in his damp shirt body, pressing against his as though she could crawl inside him and hide from the world forever. He lifted her effortless, reverent, and carried her to the bed. They fell together in a tangle of limbs and wet fabric mouths never parting. There was no hurry this time, only need. They peeled away soaked clothes with shaking hands. Skin met skin, warm, trembling, alive. Ethan kissed every fading bruise, every scar Travis had left behind, as though he could erase them with his mouth. Sarah traced the old marks on his body, the bottle scar on his arm, the faint line across his ribs, and whispered apologies and love against them, until tears mixed with the rain still clinging to their skin. When he finally moved inside her, it was slow, achingly slow, eyes locked, breaths mingling. Sarah felt the world narrow to the space between them. Every thrust, every gasp, every whispered name felt like healing. She clung to him, nails digging into his shoulders, tears slipping freely. "I love you," she breathed against his mouth. "I love you. I love you." Ethan's rhythm faltered. His forehead pressed to hers. "I've waited 15 years for you," he rasped. 15 years of thinking I didn't deserve this. That I'd never have this. "You have it now," she whispered. "You have me. Always." They moved together, fierce, tender, desperate, until the storm inside them broke. Afterward, they lay tangled in damp sheets, hearts pounding in unison. Ethan traced the line of her spine with gentle fingers. "I almost lost you tonight," he said quietly. "All of you." Sarah turned in his arms, cupped his face. "But you didn't." He closed his eyes. "I keep thinking about the boy I was," he admitted, hiding, listening, doing nothing. "And tonight I finally did something." Sarah kissed him softly. "You did everything." They lay in silence for a long time, only the sound of their breathing, the distant drip of rain from the eaves. Then Sarah spoke again, voice small. "I was so scared I'd wake up tomorrow and find out this was all a dream. That I'd be back in that apartment. Cold, hungry, alone." Ethan tightened his arms around her. "You'll never be cold again," he promised. "You'll never be hungry. You'll never be alone." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "I believe you." He kissed her forehead. "I'm going to marry you," he said quietly. "When the time is right, when the world knows you're safe, I'm going to give you and the twins everything I have, and everything I am." Sarah's breath caught. Tears slipped free. "I want that," she whispered. "I want forever with you." Ethan smiled, small, real, the first true smile she had ever seen on him. "Then forever is yours." Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sky began to lighten gray, turning to pale rose. Inside, two people who had known too much pain held each other in the quiet dawn. Love had not erased the scars, but it had begun to cover them, gentle, fierce, unbreakable. And for the first time in years, Sarah let herself believe that tomorrow could be better, that tomorrow could be theirs. The weeks following that rain-soaked November night in 2025 passed in a strange, suspended hush. The courts moved quickly. Travis's death from acute liver failure in county custody closed the criminal charges against him. But the family court hearing for permanent termination of parental rights proceeded without delay. Sarah attended every session dressed in simple but elegant clothes Rosa had quietly purchased for her soft wool dresses, warm coats, shoes that did not pinch. Each time she stepped into the Allegheny County Courthouse, she felt the old shame rise like bile. The memory of standing in line at the welfare office in threadbare sneakers, hair unwashed because hot water had run out mid-shower, begging for extensions on rent she could never pay. Now she walked through polished hallways flanked by Ethan, tall, composed, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. The disparity still made her dizzy. She had once counted pennies for bus fare. Now she rode in a heated black car with leather seats, softer than any bed she had ever owned. She had once hidden bruises beneath long sleeves at the dollar store. Now the last faint marks on her skin were fading under the care of private doctors and gentle hands that never struck. The judge, a stern woman with kind eyes, reviewed the evidence without emotion. Medical records documenting years of untreated injuries, bank statements showing embezzled medical funds, witness statements from neighbors who had heard screams, Through thin walls, police reports never properly filed because Travis had connections at the precinct. The final report from the pediatric cardiologist confirmed Emma's condition had deteriorated precisely because of neglect. Sarah testified last. She stood at the witness stand in a soft gray dress, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her voice, still soft, still carrying the timid politeness of someone who had spent years trying not to be noticed, grew steadier with every word. "I stayed too long," she said quietly. "I thought I could protect them by staying quiet. I thought they needed a father, even a bad one. But every night I watched them flinch at footsteps every time I saw Emma struggle to breathe and knew the money for her medicine had gone to poker games instead. I knew I was wrong." She looked directly at the judge. "They deserve safety. They deserve warmth. They deserve love that doesn't hurt." The courtroom was silent except for the soft scratch of the court reporter's keys. The judge ruled within the hour. Parental rights terminated permanently. Full custody awarded to Sarah. No visitation. No appeals. When the gavel fell, Sarah felt something inside her finally loosen. A knot of fear she had carried so long she had forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. She turned to find Ethan waiting in the back row. He stood when she approached, eyes shining with something fierce and tender. Outside the courthouse, snow fell in gentle, silent flakes. Ethan pulled her into his arms right there on the steps, uncaring of the reporters, the passers-by, the world. "You did it," he whispered against her hair. "You saved them. Again." Sarah clung to him, tears freezing on her lashes. "We did it," she corrected softly. That evening back at the estate, the house felt different, lighter, as though the air itself had exhaled. Rosa prepared a quiet celebration dinner: roast chicken, fragrant with rosemary, mashed potatoes, creamy with butter, fresh green beans, apple pie warm from the oven. The twins ate with wide eyes, cheeks flushed from the warmth and the joy of watching their mother smile without shadows behind her eyes. After dessert, Ethan asked Rosa to take the children upstairs for baths and stories. When the house grew quiet, he led Sarah to the solarium. The room glowed with strings of soft white lights Rosa had hung earlier that week. Beyond the glass walls, the gardens lay under a fresh blanket of snow. A small fire crackled in the corner hearth. Ethan stopped in the center of the room. Sarah looked up at him, curious heart already beginning to race. He took both her hands. "I've spent most of my life believing I didn't deserve happiness," he said quietly. "That the things I'd done, the blood on my hands, meant I would always be alone. And then a wrong number text came through at midnight, and everything changed." Sarah's throat tightened. "I saw your name," he continued, "and I remembered the girl who stood between me and pain when no one else would. I remembered how you looked at me, not with pity, not with fear, just kindness, and I knew even before I reached that apartment that I would do anything to keep you safe." He reached into his pocket. A small velvet box. He opened it. Inside lay a simple diamond ring, single stone, elegant, catching the firelight like captured starlight. Sarah's breath caught. "Sarah Jennings," Ethan said, voice rough with emotion. "I want to spend the rest of my life proving I can be the man you and the twins deserve. I want to give you the safety you never had, the warmth you fought so hard to find, the love you thought you'd never know." He dropped to one knee, slowly, reverently. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. She looked at the ring, then at him, at the powerful, wealthy man, who had once been a lonely boy, who had carried guilt like a second skin, who had risked everything to save her and her children. She thought of the night she had cried herself to sleep on a lumpy mattress, listening to the wind howl through cracks, wondering if anyone would ever care enough to help. She thought of the first time he had carried her out of that apartment, strong, steady, gentle. She thought of his arms around her tonight, promising forever. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, laughing through tears. "Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes." Ethan rose, slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He kissed her deep, slow, full of everything they had survived. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "More than I ever thought possible." Sarah smiled, real bright, free. "I love you too." They stood together in the glowing solarium, arms around each other, watching snow fall in perfect silence. Months later, spring of 2026, the wedding was small, intimate, held in the mansion's rose garden when the first blooms opened. Rosa cried through the entire ceremony. The twins walked ahead, Noah carrying the rings on a velvet pillow, Emma scattering rose petals with careful, joyful handfuls. Sarah wore a simple white dress, flowing elegant, nothing like the thrift store rags she had once owned. Ethan stood waiting in a dark suit, eyes shining when he saw her. They spoke their vows under a soft May sky. "I promise to protect you," Ethan said, voice steady but thick. "To love you. To build a life where you never have to be afraid again." "I promise to trust you," Sarah answered softly. "To love you. To let you show me what family really means." When they kissed, gentle, deep, full of promise, the twins cheered, throwing petals into the air. 1 year later, almost to the day of that first desperate text, the mansion garden bloomed again. Sarah stood on the terrace watching Ethan push the twins on the new swing set he had installed himself, laughing as Noah demanded higher, and Emma squealed with delight. She touched the ring on her finger, simple, sparkling, a constant reminder. She thought of the cold nights, the empty pantry, the fear that had once been her only companion. She thought of the wrong number that had become the right one. Ethan looked up, caught her eye, smiled, that rare, real smile reserved only for her. Sarah smiled back, heart so full it hurt in the best possible way. They were safe. They were loved. They were home. Forever. The calendar had turned to early spring in the year 2026, and the gardens surrounding the Sewickley Heights mansion burst into life with a quiet, stubborn beauty. Roses climbed the stone walls in soft pinks and creams, their petals trembling in the gentle breeze that carried the scent of fresh earth and renewal. Sarah Jennings stood on the terrace, arms wrapped loosely around herself, watching Noah and Emma chase each other across the lawn. Their laughter rang clear and bright sounds that once seemed impossible in the cold, echoing silence of the Hill District apartment where fear had been their constant companion. She wore a simple cotton dress, now one she had chosen herself from a small boutique Ethan had quietly taken her 2 weeks earlier. No more borrowed silk robes that made her feel like an intruder in someone else's life. The dress was hers, soft, blue, modest, comfortable. Yet even this small act of ownership still felt miraculous. She remembered winters when she had owned only one pair of jeans patched at the knees, and a single sweater so thin the wind cut straight through it like knives. She remembered nights when the twins cried from hunger, and she could give them nothing but water, and whispered promises that tomorrow would be better. Those memories no longer crushed her, but they lingered like faint bruises, tender when pressed. Ethan appeared beside her without a sound, as he often did. He wore a dark sweater and jeans, simple clothes that somehow still carried the quiet authority of a man who commanded respect in rooms filled with powerful people. He slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her gently against his side. "They're growing so fast," he murmured, watching the children tumble into a giggling heap on the grass. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. "They're happy," she said softly. "Really happy. I never thought I'd see that." Ethan pressed a kiss to her temple. "You gave them that." She shook her head. "We did." They stood in silence for a long time, simply breathing the same air, watching the twins play. The contrast between their past and this present still struck Sarah like a physical blow sometimes. She had once stood in food pantry lines for hours, coat soaked through with rain, praying there would be enough canned soup left for 3. She had once counted every penny for bus fare, walking miles home in shoes with holes when the money ran out. She had once believed that love, real, gentle, protective love, was something that happened to other people, people who did not carry the weight of survival on their thin shoulders. Now she lived in a house where fresh flowers arrived weekly, where the pantry was never empty, where warmth wrapped around her like arms that never let go. And the man beside her, the man who had once been feared across half the city, looked at her as though she were the only thing in the world that mattered. The guilt still lived in him. She saw it in quiet moments, the way his eyes darkened when he thought she was not watching, the way his hands sometimes clenched when he remembered the boy who had hidden while his mother died. But he no longer carried that guilt alone. She had taught him slowly, patiently, that forgiveness could begin with being forgiven. One afternoon in late April, Ethan took her to the rose garden at the far end of the estate. The children were with Rosa, baking cookies in the warm kitchen. The sun was soft, golden, filtering through new leaves. He stopped beside a bench beneath a trellis heavy with blooming white roses. "Sarah," he said quietly. She turned to him, curious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it. Inside lay 2 rings, simple bands of white gold, one larger, one smaller. Etched inside each was a single word: forever. "I don't want a big wedding," he said, voice low and rough with emotion. "I don't need crowds or cameras or anything that belongs to the world out there. I just want you. I want us. I want the children to grow up knowing that love doesn't have to hurt, that safety isn't something you earn, it's something you're given freely." He took her hand. "I was a man who thought power meant control," he continued. "But you showed me that real strength is gentleness. Real power is protecting what matters most. I want to spend every day proving I can be that man, not for the city, not for the empire I built, but for you, for Noah, for Emma." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. "I never thought anyone could love me like this," she whispered. "I thought love was something that came with conditions, something that could be taken away." Ethan slid the larger ring onto her finger, then the smaller one onto his own. "No conditions," he said. "No taking away. Only this us forever." She looked at the ring, then at him. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, slow, deep, full of every promise they had made in silence over the months. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, "regardless of where you came from, regardless of what you had or didn't have. Love doesn't see skin color. Love doesn't see wealth or poverty. Love sees heart. And yours is the most beautiful one I've ever known." Sarah smiled through her tears. "And yours," she whispered, "is the strongest." Months later, on a warm summer evening, the family gathered in the garden for a small private ceremony. Rosa stood as witness, tears shining in her eyes. Noah and Emma carried wildflowers they had picked themselves, tiny bouquets clutched in small hands. There were no crowds, no photographers, only love. When Ethan and Sarah exchanged vows beneath the rose trellis, the words were simple. "I promise to love you through every storm," Ethan said. "I promise to trust you through every sunrise," Sarah answered. They kissed, gentle, sure, eternal. Afterward, the children ran circles around them, laughing. Rosa hugged them both, whispering blessings in a voice thick with emotion. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Sarah stood with Ethan on the terrace watching the children play. She leaned against him, head on his shoulder. "I used to think happiness was something other people had," she said quietly, "something I could never touch." Ethan kissed her hair. "Now you know," he murmured, "happiness isn't about money or power. It's about choosing each other every single day." Sarah smiled. "And I choose you," she whispered, "always." This story reminds us of many valuable lessons about life. First, it shows us that love knows no boundaries of skin color, wealth, or poverty. True compassion sees only hearts. Knowledge teaches us that real strength lies in gentleness, and that knowledge of our own pain can become the bridge that heals another. Each situation offers a lesson in forgiveness, a lesson in courage, a lesson in choosing love over fear. Education of the heart shows us that poverty cannot diminish worth, and that wealth means nothing without kindness. Another lesson appears in the quiet moments of trust rebuilt, and yet another in the education of learning to receive help without shame. Knowledge reminds us that every wrong number can become the right one when compassion answers. A final lesson emerges in the understanding that family is not born only of blood, but of choice, protection, and love. We wish everyone watching this video good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Alex Truths, so you don't miss any of our engaging videos every day. How did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of anything in your own life? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. We truly want to hear the emotions from the deepest part of your hearts. Goodbye for now, and we promise to see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.